Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday to you on this May 19th, 2025. I have all of the stories for your rush hour ride home, and congratulations, really, to you guys. I mean, good work. You made it through the workday. You had a fun Sunday fun day, and you know what? Showing up is literally 90% of success, so I hope you made it through the day okay. We'll be discussing today Joe Biden, his cancer diagnosis. He has released a statement of gratitude, and I'll share that for you. And speaking of gratitude, All-American Rejects have announced a very bizarre plan to perform at houses across the country. How punk rock is this? They've got a lot of gratitude for their fan base, and it's paying off tenfold as they're going mega viral. So this one's for all of my elder millennials out there. You're going to love this story. And then more on the Diddy trial as Danity Kane singer Dawn Richard testifies today. Second week of the trial. We'll share what's going on with that. And then Blake Lively, again, also in the news, as Perez Hilton offers a very bizarre source that has shared with them basically that Blake Lively is begging for good press. She's going to need it as more celebrities disavow her. Gigi Hadid, the next one that pledges loyalty to Taylor Swift. And then we'll get into some talks of budgetary stuff. Oh, we love a good budgetary conversation. Well, the lies that are being spoken to our faces, the gaslighting that's existing, we will be here to correct. And then hopefully some good news about Gaza, if there is any. They're starving people, literally millions starving. Well, it looks like humanitarian aid will begin to make its way into that war-torn area. If you don't know anything about that story, I'm here to share all of it with you as we continue to try to shine a spotlight into ways that even acknowledging and educating ourselves on the tragedy that's existing might lead to change and save innocent lives. So again, lots to get into today. Buckle up, stick around. We'll be back with all these stories and more coming up next on The Rush. Well, sadly, the topic of cancer and other terminal illness is one that crosses political lines as it affects everyone. We've all had a member of our family or close friend who has had their life taken from that. And right now, Joe Biden is battling for his life, and he shares this update. Cancer touches us all. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support. Now, Joe Biden is one who knows tragedy. His wife and child died in a car accident. His other child died of a cancer. I mean, he has dealt with, a wild amount of tragedy in his life. And it's a sad thing. And, death, sadly, when you think about it, really just reminds us how much life is worth living. I actually lost my grandfather this morning. And it reminds me, my grandfather was a guy who had a lot of unrealized artistic ability. And he kind of grew up in a time where you didn't always get the opportunity to express that. And for those of you that are out there that have an artistic itch, a creative desire, or just something in life that you're looking to pursue, but maybe you're in a job that doesn't allow that creativity. We teach our kids to laugh. We teach our kids to play. And then as adults, sometimes we forget those lessons. We remember those lessons through, stories like Peter Pan, right? Now, obviously, Peter Pan syndrome is kind of seen as like a negative thing when a guy doesn't want to grow up. But my adult life is actually inspired by the idea that I want to get back to my inner child and learn to play more. And I say all of that because sometimes, sadly, it takes tragedy to realize how short life is and what's really important other than like getting the most out of your God-given gifts, whether it's creative or otherwise. And we're finding that out by All-American Rejects. Now, All-American Rejects could mail it in as a band that we loved, 15 years ago? How old is it, right? But I'm telling you right now, you put All-American Rejects on your Spotify and you are going to dance. You are going to party. And they're doing this thing, which I find so interesting, which is in today's world with cell phones in our pockets and the chance to tap into a global audience, you don't have to perform at gigantic venues. So rather than do a half-filled arena tour, they're actually doing this very guerrilla marketing style tour where they're playing people's backyards and it's going super viral online, getting way more views than it would get if they just did some arena tour, performing in some mall somewhere. Have a listen to this.
How's it going? We've been overwhelmed with the reaction to our LA house party pop-up. We see all your comments, DMs requesting these house parties in your city.
So they do this pop-up and everyone's like, oh my gosh, come to my city, come to my city. So what do? They get a link, they get your emails, they say, text us, we'll let you know if we're going to come to your city.
We're for sure hitting at least 7 cities this month in the U.S., so sign up so you get the location ahead of time.
And I'm like, come on, there's no way the All-American Rejects are just going to play in somebody's backyard. Yesterday, the All-American Rejects were in Columbia, Missouri, and yeah, they got shut down by cops. Have a listen to this. So there it is. Now, obviously, this audio sounds terrible, but if you're listening on the audio-only podcast here, they're just in someone's backyard. There's people hanging off of the roofs. There's, thousands of people that showed up. Now, obviously, the neighbors are not going to be too happy about this. You know what they should do? They should do a concert. You remember that story we had where there's the kids who are getting sued for playing basketball by the neighbor who doesn't like the sound of them dribbling? They should get the All-American Rejects to come play there. But either way, you can just search online. There's just trillions of videos of them. They're getting such great press for the fact that they're doing their thing. They're out there, they're rocking out, and they're not worried about ticket sales. They're just having a good time. And it's just a reminder that whatever your art is, if you give to this world, if you offer the gift of your art, whether it be literally, the guy who does barbershop cuts on the sidewalk and he shares it with others. There's a dude who pressure washes. His art is sharing the positive joy that people get from having their driveways pressure washed. Whatever your art is, whatever your creative itch is, we live in a world where you got a phone and you can do it. So don't be afraid. I love to remind my audience, don't be afraid to try something different, to share it, and just to be a part of that positive energy. Positive energy, as much as we live in a world ruled by fear, positive energy will kick fear's ass every day of the week. And we get to see that play out right here. So good to see All-American Rejects. Now, sadly, we have an update to the story of the Mexican Navy ship that had a collision course with the Brooklyn Bridge. Same fears we had earlier this morning are realized in this news story that it appears the ship lost power. And I know what people are saying. How could the ship have lost power, but then the lights were on? It's like, look, I've watched a couple seasons of Below Deck. You can lose power to the engines and still have power that generates your light bulbs. It's completely different. Have a listen.
New York's mayor says it appears the ship lost power. That would have left it at the mercy of the current, which pushed it right into the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, think about being one of the people strapped into that mast, snapped like a twig.
Look. Oh my God.
Cell phone videos capture the unbelievable scene Saturday night. A Mexican Navy vessel, the Cuauhtémoc, on a slow-moving collision course with the Brooklyn Bridge.
I mean, I remember, look, I kind of say this joking, right? But I remember an episode of Sailing Yacht, Below Deck Sailing Yacht, which is this giant $20 million yacht. Of course, nowhere near as big as this boat. And I remember there was a moment there where the power went out on their computers, which controlled their engines. And if you're drifting down the river and you cannot get your anchor down in time, and if you cannot get the thrusters going and all these other things, you're dead man. You're just a dead man. And yeah, it's just a really sad story. Several people have died from this. And, I don't know if they're not going to, what they're going to do moving forward, and just a tragedy you just did not expect to see here on a random weekend right before they had this Tall Ships Festival. Well, here's your Diddy update. Don Richard testifies. Now, Don Richard, a member of Danity Kane, singer Don Richard testifies for the prosecution in the Diddy trial, says if Diddy didn't get his way, people could go missing. Now, this has been one of the claims of Diddy for a long time, which is that he's the one, when J-Lo was dating him, there was like a gun issue at a nightclub, and like that the guy kind of rules by a heavy fist, maybe a megalomaniac. I don't really, I can't define what or who Diddy is, but clearly he's a man who abused his power. Prosecutors were homing in on the racketeering charge against Diddy. As Richard was asked what she thought Diddy meant by that, Richards replied that people could die. Richard was also called to buttress Cassie's testimony last week. Richard testified how she personally observed Diddy drag her, kick her, and punch her in the mouth. Now, of course, we've seen video of that, so that's obvious that he's a bad guy. The question is, was there bigger charges of the trafficking that they speak of and things like that? So we'll give more updates as they come. It's only Monday morning or Monday afternoon, so trial's still ongoing and it's not televised, so we have to wait for people to get out of the trial. But if anyone's been in the trial or in the courtroom and wants to give our channel any updates, please shoot me a message on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. I'd love to hear from you. We're going to have some people on this week to kind of catch us up. It's a big deal, this trial, but I've been kind of hesitated to get into the nitty gritty of it because ultimately it's extremely sad hearing some of the testimony of some of the things that have happened, with him and some of the victims. So anyway, more updates on those. We'll try to, sanitize it a little bit for you guys here. We'll have more updates to those. Coming up next, we have a Blake Lively story as Perez Hilton explains that Blake Lively's PR game working overdrive. We'll have that coming up next after a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode of the Rush Hour is sponsored by Quince. You know when a new shirt becomes your go-to? That's what happened when I picked up a few new pieces from Quince. They're the first things I reached for in my closet, lightweight, comfortable, and always on point. Quince has all the things you actually want to wear, like organic cotton silk polos, European linen beach shorts, and comfortable pants that work for everything from backyard hangs to nice dinners to podcasting with you guys. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. Go check them out, folks, if you don't believe me. Trust me, my wife loves this website. I'm telling you, it's a linen summer for me. Drawstring linen shorts, linen shirts, top to bottom, everything's linen on me. Elevate your closet with Quince. Go to quince.com/rushhour for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/rushhour to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/rushhour. Now back to the show. Well, this morning we shared that Cara Delevingne unfollowed Blake Lively. It really is telling. I know it sounds so trivial, but it really is telling when the people behind the scenes no longer want to support somebody. If you didn't know what was going on, you would say, oh, I'll wait for the trial. But clearly, these friends of Taylor Swift know something we don't know. Gigi Hadid, she was once Blake Lively's, quote, little sister, but now it looks like she's riding hard for Team Taylor. Gigi Hadid's 30th birthday bash in April raised eyebrows. I mean, they probably all had Botox, so they didn't raise their, the eyebrows raised, but nothing else did. When Blake and Ryan were noticeably absent, especially, and I'm not shaming Botox, do what you want with injectables, just know the risk, especially considering Blake once called Gigi family and reposted glowing tributes from her in the past. So, all right, that's one more unfollow. Another one bites the dust. Well, what's going on with this PR world? Because there's multiple things going on, right? On one end, we have the discovery stage happening where the subpoenas are going down between both sides, Baldoni's, Lively's side. They're spending countless, probably close to 6 figures a day as they try to acquire as much information. But as we shared this morning from Without a Crystal Ball, there's this thought that Blake's got nothing. People that have been on set that have seen footage say all of the evidence supports Justin Baldoni. Well, in the meantime, Blake Lively, at the very least, can try to dust up her PR game. She hired ex-CIA PR specialist Shapiro to help her out. And now we have Perez Hilton sharing a source that says they've been contacted and Blake is begging journalists to speak on her behalf. Have a listen.
A very well-trusted source, a friend, somebody that I know IRL in real life, just sent me the following message. My friend works in the media. I believe him, and I believe this. Quote, Blake's lawyer is calling up every news department and demanding changes in stories, and even wanting some of the quotes moved up in stories. Pause. They're afraid. They're trying to manipulate and control the media. And this is not uncommon, but I don't think it's an effective strategy.
No. We see this all the time, right? So, there's been examples, former Bachelor Nick Viall would, be on the phone with Us Weekly, or he would know people covering things. Hey, nix this, or don't do that, or can you cover this? Or it's like on a much lower celebrity gossip level, there's a lot of negotiating that goes down with all right, I'll give you this story. Here, I'll give you photos of the kids quinceañera if you just will back off and don't talk about this cheating thing or whatever. And again, the media can decide to play those games if they want to stay on someone's good side, or they can decide to play the truth. Now, sometimes they play the game where they want to continue to get access. Like take the executive branch, for instance. There are reporters that are playing the game where they bend the knee to the executive branch because they don't want to be excommunicated from the Oval Office. But does that, burn all credibility with your audience? In the end, like I can choose not to share a story, but if I cross my audience and share something that I know is wrong, then my audience is going to have a less of a sort of belief in my credibility. And, say what you want about me, but you guys know I don't lie to you. I tell you how I feel about things, whether you agree or disagree with it. I'm not bought by anybody, which is why I'm a Blake Lively fan page now that I've, got to roll with Ryan Reynolds. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, there probably would come a day where, I have a chance to sign with a CAA. They've got an influencer, they have a podcast department, and could the time come where a big deal is heading my way and I've got to decide, do I want to back off the Blake Lively coverage? Maybe. I'm not there and I won't back off. But again, people are met with those choices. It's very transparent though when people take that bait, and you guys know we're not doing that.
Sadly, they haven't reached out to me because I can't be controlled. And I can think for myself. And my friend said more. They are blowing up writers, saying he's got a list of everyone reporting on this. What? Not quite threats, but definitely overstepping. They're freaking. Whoa. My friend says that they've never seen anything like this before. Okay. F-list Blake hired just a few months ago a new crisis PR expert.
All right, so then they get into sort of some of the things we already know. Look, it's no surprise when we covered Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, there were lists put out with my name on them. Who's on this side, who's on that side. And obviously, if you're Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively and you work in the future, you're not going to give interviews to people that are going to ask you hard questions. We just know that that's the case, right? They're not going to do that. That doesn't make it right or wrong. It just, if you see a reporter who's going to do a fluff piece and not ask hard questions, that just lends to their lack of credibility, and that's on them, right? But, we live in a world where people are allowed to share their opinions, and whether you're Perez Hilton or someone else, it's like, you vote with your consumption. Who do you want to support? And that's why we're so appreciative of the folks that have stuck by our channel, right? It's because, look, I'm not going to get it right every time, but I'm going to curate what I think is interesting, and I'm going to try my best to, because there was a story I wanted to cover a few days ago, and then the more I looked into the story, the more I realized it was not really legitimate, and there weren't any legitimate sources, and I got to go, all right, well, even though that story would have been nice to share, I have a responsibility, just like we have a responsibility to cover Blake and Ryan and Justin and try to get the facts right. All right, well, let's do this. We've got an update on Taylor Swift. Is she hot or not? Now, of course, Taylor Swift, hot in the sense of can she move tickets, is the hottest artist in the world. I mean, she's a trillion times bigger than anybody else. She is the biggest. She sells out stadiums. She is hot, point blank. But here's the response from Caroline Levitt as to her hotness, whether it's physical or through business, after Donald Trump said she's no longer hot.
What does President Trump mean when he says that Taylor Swift is no longer hot?
Look, he is speaking about Taylor Swift's political views and how perhaps it has impacted the support of the American public for her work, and I will leave it at that.
And of course, it hasn't affected her whatsoever. She actually extended her stadium tour. No offense to the All-American Rejects playing in some, Missouri backyard. Taylor Swift causes earthquakes. Literally, she has seismic abilities to change the economy of towns, cities, and countries she performs in. She has never been bigger, and there has never been a star that has commanded that level of attention. It is laughable for Trump to go after Bruce Springsteen or Taylor Swift or Beyonce or any number of these gigantic people who made their wealth through their music and not through daddy's loans to then become a slumlord landlord, right? So it's like, you got to give credit where it's due. nobody forces this music down people's throats. They are parts of a movement. And Taylor Swift, I will not let her good name be besmirched. All right, here's an interesting story as we continue to discuss Jeffrey Epstein. The question is, was it suicide or murder? Now, we've had this debate ever since he killed or died or whatever the heck happened. But now the FBI director and deputy make their final ruling. And this is pissing off a lot of people because, a lot of people said, we wanted Trump in the office so he could drain the swamp and share with everybody what actually went down. What are the flight logs like? And as we found out, they did this weird PR thing where they didn't really share any information from Epstein or Epstein Island. Now, we know that Clinton was on some of those flights. We know that Trump was on some of those flights. We know that Bill Gates was on some of those flights. Epstein was a billionaire who did business but also did horrible things. Not everybody who was on those flights was a bad guy, but could those flight logs tell another story? And yet we still haven't had that information. And of course, the very basic information people want to know is, did this guy kill himself? Now, what's interesting about it is the people that are being interviewed here by Bartiromo were those that meddled and peddled in conspiracy theories. And now they're saying, there's no theory whatsoever. So coming up next, I'm going to share this clip with you.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work.
All right, so there it is. And they go, we don't know if we believe it. I don't know many people who believe that story. And, they were so excited to get a podcaster, into, head the FBI or whatever the hell their titles are. What do they got? They got, he's Deputy Director Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, FBI Director. And they wanted some truth to come out, and no one thinks they're anywhere closer to the truth. Well, here's another tough story we have to talk about, and that is the war that's going on in Gaza. People call it a genocide. I've said whether it is or not, it's terrible, and I've had people in my DMs say, Dave, you're fence-sitting on this issue. And to be quite interesting, it's extremely frustrating trying to sift through fake news. There's all these fake news stories right now. There's AI of the Pope. There's so many crazy stories right now of the Chinese are bringing humanitarian aid, which is not true. So here we have the Tennessee Holler on Instagram saying Netanyahu says he has unilaterally decided to finally allow aid into Gaza after pressure from the EU and America. Now, this aid that they are saying they're going to allow in is not a lot. And there are 1 million children in Gaza who are starving to death. This is an absolute crisis. It's really tough to talk about, but it's one that if enough of us do talk about, we can hopefully get the attention of the people that can make the decisive moves to get them food.
We've heard from the Prime Minister of Israel, who said he, in a unilateral decision he did not dare bring to cabinet vote, has decided to allow humanitarian aid to re-enter Gaza, all of Gaza, effective immediately.
Now, here's what's complicated, right? You've got people that are, pro-Israeli government. Again, this has nothing to do with how you feel about the people themselves. It's about their government. You've had people that say, well, the aid was coming in, but Hamas, the terror organization, stopping the aid. And I'm like, I don't care who the hell is stopping the aid from coming in. Find a way. Like, how can we let a small, I say small, but a relatively small terror organization compared to the world's militaries, how are we letting them dictate whether a million kids and innocent lives go hungry or not? So we actually have people that know nothing about the situation, people like Theo Vaughn, but have gigantic platforms beginning to talk about this and say, this is wrong. And look, we've known this, but the title of his video is, What Have We Become?
People, just children, women, people, body parts, just people like putting their kids back together. And I just can't believe that we're watching that and that more isn't said about it. And so I'm not saying anyone else needs to say anything, but I think I'm just that more isn't said about it by me.
And you've got people that are speaking out, right? You've got this idea where people are saying, well, Hamas, this terror organization, is using women, innocent people, children as shields to protect them. And then you have folks like Bill Burr, the comedian, saying, well, work around it. Like, figure out a way to find the bad guys and spare the human lives. And do not harm the humans in search of the bad guys. Now, there's also plenty of hostages that still exist in the Gaza area that Hamas is holding on to, Israeli hostages, and that's horrible too. Like, there needs to be a way in the good Lord's year of 2025 that we can figure this all out. Here's another political analyst, Omar Badar, saying that Israel's decision to allow limited food aid into Gaza should not be something we congratulate them for. It should be the bare minimum.
This is really a move that is happening under intense U.S. pressure to let some food in, simply to keep up the pretense that this is not a genocide, to have plausible deniability. And if tens of thousands of Palestinians start starving to death, I think that's going to get rid of that pretense and that plausible deniability. But I think it's really important to note that there's no applause here that can be offered for Netanyahu for allowing some limited food in. Because if this was about getting food to the people of Gaza, there are existing organizations that are very well experienced in doing that.
And I'll share some of the humanitarian aid that is begging to make its way into those areas to feed these kids, to feed these innocent lives. Now, there are doctors that are trying to work in completely unsanitized areas. The hospitals are blown to rubble. They don't have the simple anesthetic to walk on people who have lost their limbs and that are dying. It's an absolute tragedy. And I say if, because if this is a genocide, if we are, as a world, to allow these kids to die, these innocent lives to die, then honestly, I really truly mean this. The blood is on all of our hands. It's something where if we do speak about this, if we do continue to educate our friends and family about what's happening over there, we can make a difference. We can absolutely make a difference with enough political pressure. So here is a report. The UN humanitarian aid chief said this to Israel. Enough. We demand rapid, safe, unopened aid delivery for civilians in need. Let us work. As we demonstrated during the ceasefire this year, and every time we've been granted access, the United Nations and our humanitarian partners have the expertise, resolve, and moral clarity to deliver aid at the scale necessary to save lives across Gaza. Now, some people that think this is a bad thing, they say, well, Hamas is stealing the food. And I say this: overwhelm the area with food so that even if Hamas steals some, there's enough for other people to go around. They are dying. They are not hungry. They are starved. To these proposing an alternative modality for aid distribution, let's not waste time. We already have a plan. This document sets it out again. It is rooted in the non-negotiable principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. It is backed by a coalition of donors and the vast majority of the international community. It is ready to be activated today. If we are simply allowed to do our jobs, we have the people, we have the distribution networks, we have the trust of the communities on the ground, and we have the aid itself. 160,000 pallets of it, ready to move now. We've done this before, we can do it again. We know how to get our aid supplies registered, scanned, inspected, loaded, offloaded, inspected again, loaded again, transported, stored, protected from looting, tracked, trucked, monitored, and delivered without diversion, without delay, and with dignity. We know how to reach civilians in desperate need and stave off famine. Enough. Let us work. Continue to talk about this. Continue to share this with others, and don't be afraid to speak for what is needed. Better late than ever. I've been late to this story. I've had my head in the sand in the past. I've not understood the different words being used and who's right and who's wrong. I'll tell you who's not wrong. The innocent lives. They have done nothing. They have done nothing to deserve this other than have the misfortune of being birthed on a side of the line that isn't able to receive independently food, water, simple services that the body needs. So we have the ability. We've paid in part our tax dollars to do this. Now, on behalf of everybody, go feed these kids. Well, we've run out of time on our last story for the budget lies, but we will share that first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. It means the world to me that we've got an audience that we can sort of try to mobilize, as small as we might be, and continue to use our voice, our megaphone, to try to do a few good things in this world. It can get heavy, it can get tough, and I understand if people are just trying to take care of their own community, their own circle, but we're here and we cannot do this job of sharing the news, whether it's pop culture, political, or somewhere in between. We can't not share these challenging stories. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll be back in the morning. I'm Dave, and this is The Rush.